The secret of male thinking, known only to a small part of women, was studied for many years by Carl Jung, one of the most influential psychologists of all time. Have you noticed how some men begin to literally obsessively reach out to a woman exactly when they feel that they are losing control of the situation? This is not an accident and certainly not primitive manipulation. This is a deep mechanism of the male psyche, understood only by a few. An amazing fact: a man truly values only what he does not consider his guaranteed prey. He needs a challenge, tension, an element of uncertainty, because of which a woman in his eyes becomes unattainable, someone who is impossible to finally conquer. Having realized this principle, a woman is able to change his behavior without saying a word. Why is it that many bright, smart, and beautiful women remain without due attention from men who do not appreciate them, while others, seemingly the most ordinary, are able to conquer anyone? The answer lies in one of the oldest psychological patterns, which Jung associated with the warrior archetype. Since time immemorial, male nature has been formed around the idea of conquest. A man must feel that he is fighting for a valuable goal, and if everything comes easy to him, without the slightest mystery or resistance, something inside fades. Interest weakens, passion subsides, and he, without realizing it, seeks a new challenge. What I will tell you is not a set of tricks or a superficial technique. This is a deep understanding of male psychology that can completely change your relationship. It is important to remember, ignoring a man incorrectly can push him away forever. But if you do it right, you can awaken in him a powerful attraction and desire to be near you, which will be difficult to extinguish. In the coming minutes, you will learn how to launch a psychological trigger that makes a man almost obsessively strive to prove his importance to you. Once you have this knowledge, you will never again be his backup option. And pay attention, we are not talking about speculation and advice from glossy magazines, but about deep patterns discovered by Jung, which show how the male subconscious actually functions. If you have ever felt that you are invisible to the man you love, if you did not understand why he does not respond with the same level of attention and affection as you, then this information can change your perception of relationships. You will understand why the usual ways of conquering do not work, and how one change in your behavior can completely rewrite the dynamics. Get ready, what you learn may go against what you have been taught your whole life. Now let's look at the psychological mechanism that can turn a man from an indifferent observer into a person completely absorbed in you. This knowledge is rare and can change any relationship history today. Carl Jung, the great master of psychology, devoted decades to studying the invisible processes that control a person, and his conclusions about male nature are striking in their accuracy and depth. According to Carl Jung, deep in the male unconscious there is a special psychic construct, known to few, that completely determines male behavior in love and relationships. This is what he called the warrior archetype, an ancient driving force that makes a man value only what he has managed to win through effort, persistence, and personal involvement. Remember, have you noticed that some men lose interest when a woman becomes too available, too giving and predictable? It is not that they are indifferent or playing at feelings, but that at a deep level the fire in them goes out when the element of challenge disappears. Jung argued that in his psychological journey, a man needs a goal that will challenge him and demand proof of his own worth. When everything comes too easily, his unconscious registers it as an already won battle, and desire naturally begins to fade. This is a bitter truth that many women learn from their own experience. They give everything. Always in touch, always understanding, always ready to wait. And, oddly enough, this is precisely what leads to the fact that they are valued less and less. This is not the cruelty of a man's character, but a built-in mechanism of his psyche. It should be understood, the correct ignoring of a man is not a game of coldness or cheap manipulation, but a conscious use of knowledge about male psychology to awaken his deepest instincts. What happens in his mind when a woman is completely available? At first it feeds his ego, he feels significant, desired, strong. But over time, the male mind begins to perceive constant availability as the absence of barriers. Without these barriers, the warrior archetype falls asleep. He no longer needs to achieve, prove, conquer. And it is this internal battle that keeps his desire alive. Jung described the phenomenon of tension of opposites, the craving of human consciousness for a balance between the poles, closeness and distance, confidence and doubt, desire and inaccessibility. When one of these poles disappears, giving way to absolute predictability and total dedication, the tension that maintains interest disappears. Gradually, a man begins to value what he has less, without even realizing it. What does correct ignoring really mean? It is not silent punishment, not feigned indifference, and not artificially creating conflicts. It is restoring psychological balance through what Jung called strategic energy diversion. When a woman gives her full attention to a man, she creates an imbalance in his direction. The true essence of correct ignoring is redirecting this energy back to herself. The mistake many women make is that they perceive ignoring as a complete disappearance. They do not respond to messages, disappear for days, create a deafening silence. Yes, this can temporarily cause a reaction, but often leads to the opposite result. The man decides that this is a final refusal and simply leaves. The Jungian approach to ignoring is much more subtle and effective. It is based on creating an emotional deficit. You don't physically disappear, but you become less emotionally available. You respond to messages, but without the same speed and emotional coloring. You act friendly, but you remove the intense desire to please. You remain polite, but you stop looking for his approval. It is a subtle shift, almost unnoticeable to the mind, but it triggers powerful internal processes in the male subconscious. The man senses a change, although he is unable to say exactly what it is. This slight uncertainty introduces an element of caution into his consciousness. An ancient fear of loss awakens. Jung claimed that the depths of the male unconscious are permeated with the fear of being replaced, of losing significance, of losing his unique position. When your emotional presence is diminished without conflict or explanation, but simply through a careful withdrawal of energy, anxiety arises in him. It is at this moment that the turning point begins. The one who took you for granted suddenly feels an internal discomfort. Questions appear in his thoughts. What has changed? Why is she different? Am I losing her? This is the time when the warrior archetype, which was sleeping without action, awakens. The victory he considered his own is suddenly called into question. And it is this sense of uncertainty that sparks interest, focus, and attraction. The main strength of this method is that you are not creating a contrived game, but restoring the balance of energy in the relationship. You make it clear through actions, not words, that your attention, care, time, and emotional involvement are not an infinite resource, available without effort on his part. On a deep, nonverbal level, you convey that your presence nearby is a conscious choice, not a given. Jung described the concept of individuation, the path by which a person becomes whole and self-sufficient, freed from the influence of others. By applying conscious emotional distance, you, in essence, move in your own process of individuation. You stop revolving around him, becoming an independent center of gravity. And it is this autonomy, your own orbit, that paradoxically begins to pull him much more strongly. One of the key mistakes many women make is the belief that you can win a man over only by giving him more and more attention, warmth, and availability. But the Jungian approach demonstrates the opposite. It is precisely the measured absence, the measured distance, and the inner independence that ignite in him the desire to get you back. Not because of the fear of physical loss, but because of the feeling that he is losing his place in your emotional space. For the male psyche, this is a challenge that he cannot ignore. Further, about how to correctly implement this idea, how to build the optimal measure of emotional retreat so that it is not too weak, leaving him in his comfort zone, and not excessive, pushing him away completely. There is that very point of balance at which the relationship changes radically. The man moves from indifference to full involvement and the desire to keep his place in your life. This is a technique that I call presence in absence. You remain physically close, but create a slight emotional barrier. You respond to messages, but without the same haste. You smile, but you don't try to please. You communicate, but you leave a part of yourself behind the curtain. It's not about specific actions, but about a shift in energetic focus. And this shift transmits a powerful message to the male unconscious. I am no longer a guarantee in your life. This is the strongest signal that can be sent to the male mind. When a man faces this shift in your energy, a special process is launched in his psyche. An ancient instinct is activated, the fear of loss. This is not a rational, conscious fear, but a deep inner anxiety that he is unable to clearly formulate. Jung emphasized that the unconscious does not think with logic, but with images and sensations, and your sudden emotional distance turns into a strong symbol of possible loss. The male mind does not tolerate this empty space well. Notice that during the period of your strategic retreat, he will begin to act differently. He may initiate communication more often, ask questions, seek your attention in new ways. The reason is that you have again become a mystery to him that needs to be solved. The warrior archetype that was dormant in him comes to life, and he feels an urgent need to regain his place in your life. This is not manipulation, but a natural mechanism of deep psychology. The key is the right moment. If you apply this approach too early, before you have a strong connection, he will simply move on without you. If you apply it too late, when interest has completely faded, the effect may not be noticeable. The ideal time is at the first signs that he has started to take you for granted. Messages arrive late, meetings are scheduled only for his schedule, and you realize that you are giving significantly more to the relationship than you are receiving. Most women make a mistake at this point. They try to compensate for the imbalance by being even more available and flexible. This is a natural reaction, but it only exacerbates the problem. The Jungian approach advises the opposite. At this point, it is important to create space, restore the energy balance, and make him feel that his presence in your life is a privilege, not a guarantee. Below is a step-by-step algorithm for correctly ignoring a man according to the principles of Jungian psychology. First, gradually reduce the level of your emotional involvement. This does not mean interrupting communication or completely ignoring him. It's about responding without the same rush, without the obsessive desire to please, without the anxious expectation of evaluation. Your answers become more laconic, more reserved, less emotional. You stay in touch, but you are no longer fully open. Second, redirect your life energy. If you used to spend a lot of time waiting for his attention, constantly thinking about him and planning meetings, start investing this time in yourself. Take up new hobbies, strengthen your friendships, move forward with your personal projects. Jung spoke of psychic energy as a resource. When you take it from the object and direct it inward, you become the center of attraction, which paradoxically attracts him to you again. Third, add a little mystery to your image. This does not mean making up stories or playing pretend. Just stop being completely transparent in your every intention and decision. Let part of your life remain behind the scenes. If he asks what has changed, give a short, calm answer. Recently, I've been spending more time on myself. That will be enough. The fourth step is to maintain your inner and outer dignity. This is not about punishment, conflict, or rudeness. You remain polite, friendly, and respectful, but at the same time add a light layer of emotional distance. Jung emphasized that real change occurs not through superficial techniques, but through a deep transformation in how you perceive yourself and therefore others. The fifth key step is to not give up at the first signs of his return. This is where most women fail. As soon as a man begins to take the initiative, write more often, strive for meetings, they immediately return to their previous complete availability, and the cycle repeats. The secret to a long-term effect is to maintain a new position even when he begins to react. This is not a temporary measure, but a new format of your presence in the relationship. The result of following this strategy is amazing. The man enters a state that Jung called creative tension. He feels that he is obliged to regain his place in your life, to prove his significance again. It's like a switch flips in his mind that takes him from a complacent hunter to a warrior with a purpose. The key to this approach is that it works not because you're playing on his emotions, but because you're bringing out the best in him. Jung was convinced that every person has hidden potential for growth, but it often lies dormant until challenged. By refusing to settle for less than you deserve and demonstrating the value of your presence through actions rather than words or ultimatums, you create space for him to grow. Many women don't realize that a constant willingness to give in, endure, and settle for less unwittingly stunts a man's growth. It's like saying you don't have to try, change, or become better. I'll accept you even as a backup. The Jungian method changes this logic completely. Your deliberate emotional distance creates the conditions under which he begins to understand. He needs to do more, develop, invest. And this is not a power play, not a trick, not a pretense. This is a deep rethinking of relationships, built on fundamental psychological principles. You do not imitate coldness, you actually invest in yourself. You do not punish, you show self-respect. You do not create drama, you restore balance. And it is this authenticity that makes the method so effective. Jung's research shows that deep down, a man is drawn to a woman of mystery, and not to an open book without unexpected pages. He needs someone who inspires him to grow, and not someone who accepts the remains of attention. He needs a woman with a rich inner world, and not someone whose life revolves exclusively around him. When you become like this, not in a role but sincerely, through the awareness of your own value, something ancient and irresistible awakens in him. The desire to achieve, to deserve, and to prove. What I share is not just a way to increase your significance in his eyes. It is a profound restructuring of your position in the relationship. When you begin to understand and apply these principles, not only does the way he treats you change, but also the way you see yourself. And this is no longer just a technique, it is a real internal revolution. Jung argued that the most important connection in life is the connection with yourself. When that changes, the transformation inevitably affects all other relationships. Think about it. What happens when you stop revolving around a man and start creating your own field of attraction? The entire balance of power changes. You are no longer the one who waits, adjusts, and is content with random manifestations of attention. You become a woman who is aware of her significance, who understands that her presence is a privilege, not an obligation. And this is not pride, but mature self-knowledge. It is the understanding that you do not need to achieve someone's love. It is enough to allow yourself to be conquered. This change goes far beyond a specific romantic relationship. It is reflected in every aspect of your life. When you stop looking for external validation and find value within yourself, your energy changes. People feel it even on a subconscious level. You become attractive not because you are trying to please, but because you stand firmly on your own axis. Jung called this path individuation, becoming yourself, regardless of other people's expectations. And this is a truth that few people realize. A man falls in love not with your efforts for him, but with the sensations he experiences next to you. And the less you constantly feed his ego, the higher your value becomes in his eyes. The paradox is that conscious distance is not a manipulation technique, but the result of internal growth, which involuntarily changes his attitude towards you. You do not play psychological games to influence his behavior. You change your internal attitudes, and in this way you rebuild the dynamics of your relationship. Some women ask, "Isn't it pretense to be like this?" The answer is always the same. No, this is the rejection of pretense. After all, when you are always in touch, sacrifice your interests and put his desires above your own, you wear a mask, a social role created for the sake of approval. True authenticity begins when you begin to respect your needs, set boundaries, and stop settling for less. This awareness is liberating. You realize that you no longer have to beg for attention. You no longer have to make yourself smaller to fit someone else's expectations. And you will never again accept emotional leftovers when you are worthy of a whole feast. The true power of attraction lies not in tricks, but in inner transformation. Jung believed that every person has the potential to be themselves, without the shackles of stereotypes and limiting habits. By following these principles, you take a step towards this authenticity. You learn not only to build healthier relationships with men, but also to respect your path, your value, your inner light. And here's what's amazing about it. As soon as the need for his constant approval disappears, your attractiveness to him increases. Not because of playing with images, but because you shine from within. A man who previously took you for granted begins to see you as a special, rare woman who cannot be found everywhere. Not because you changed for him, but because you allowed your true nature to reveal itself. This realization changes everything. And it's not just that he will start looking for you with renewed vigor, although this will inevitably happen. The main thing is that you will stop getting lost in trying to earn someone's love. You realize you are a prize worth fighting for. And this inner confidence will become what will forever change your relationships with both men and yourself.